Fighting in the La-5. Sometimes easy, sometimes challenging, but surely rewarding when successful. In this video we will take a look on how to deploy the strengths and how to avoid the weaknesses of the La-5 in a fight. We will talk about gunnery, then I will give some general tips on how to get into good situations, and after that we will get into all the nice nitty-gritty details on how to fight 109s and 190s in different situations. I hope you will enjoy this video. Let's go! One thing I hear very often is that pilots don't like the guns of the La-5. And yes, hitting your target is not very easy comparatively speaking. That has a couple of reasons. First, the aircraft is only equipped with 20mm cannons and has no light armament, which provides truly a punch, but the comparatively low bullet velocity and fire rate makes shooting a little bit harder in deflection situations compared, for example, to the UB guns. Furthermore, the elevator is quite effective in cruise flight, and if the aircraft is not trimmed or controlled in a very skillful way, the nose is quite wobbly at times. But what makes the La-5's armament truly special is the relatively high position of the guns on the aircraft, and I guess that is the main reason for difficulties the pilots express. As the guns are already positioned in an elevated position, the bullets are flying in a kinda flat trajectory, and that is very confusing if you are accustomed to other designs. So instead of aiming above the target, you have to hold your guns a little bit below or even on the target on a quite huge variety of ranges to hit successfully, and this needs some time to get used to. Thanks to the first part of my how-to La-5 videos, we now know what the strengths and the weaknesses of the La-5 are. Good top speed on the deck, faster than 109s and almost as fast as Focke-Wulf 190 A3s. Generally speaking, a worse vertical and horizontal maneuverability compared to a 109. The roll rate is very good, better than 109's roll rate, and on medium speeds on par to the 190. Those abilities and weaknesses give you a general outline where to fly this aircraft in your sorties. To exploit the good low altitude characteristics, I rarely fly over 4 km of altitude. Getting the aircraft to fly higher is a pain anyway. Checking your SIGs every few seconds should be natural to you, since the Germans like to fly a little higher and they will dive on you regardless. Key is to see the fighter in time and to evade. So flying at 2 to 3 km is often easier than to fly at 4 to 5 km, since the 109s can't dive on you on that low altitude so easily, since they are locking up in the dive. Ideally there's some cloud cover you can hide under. The La-5 is one of the best fighters on the VVS side for bad weather sorties, since all the enemy fighters are forced to fly low as well. The targets you want to go for are of course first and foremost ground attackers who are attacking your ground targets, but then of course fighters who are trying to get your PE2s and IL2s. The good low altitude performance make the La-5 a fantastic escort fighter for ground attack aircraft like the IL-2 and the PE-2. German fighter pilots often see only the ground attackers and are flying their boom and zoom attacks to the deck and are bouncing back up. That is your chance to come in with a lot of speed and to pick them off. 190s and 109s in a lower energy state will have a serious problem to get away from you. Ideally you fly in a team of at least 2. That opens up drag and back tactics, and you have somebody who can check your SIGs, which you can't check yourself very well in the La-5. But that is the general tactical outline. Let's go into the details. In the following chapter I will explain how you can solve different tactical situations against 109s and 190s. Keep in mind that those situations I explain are basically blueprints. Air combat is highly dynamic and the outcome is often determined by very minor things. To judge the situation fast and accurate is key, and the resulting maneuver to achieve success has to be flown quick, with resolve and precision. And even all three components are rarely achieved perfectly by anybody. Usually the pilot is successful who can unify all that a little bit better than the others. So that being said, let me start with the situation that you have the energy advantage against the BF 109 F or G. So you fly into an area and you spot a 109 below you, maybe extending from an attack or so. The main task for you is to keep the energy advantage on him until he's shot down or he's forced to dive away. Which would be a tactical victory already. They are out of the fight for the moment. The biggest weapon of the 109 is the insane climb rate. A good 109 pilot will try to use that to even out the energy state and then to get the advantage on you. And if you are not doing your thing right, he will succeed in a couple of maneuvers. I mean, the easiest way to circumvent this, of course, is just to shoot him down in the first pass. My favorite kind of aerial victory. Dive on the 109, go low 6, wait until the wingtips are touching the inner ring of the gun sight and shoot him down. It's often not that easy. If he evades, go full boost, trade, speed for altitude, keep him in sight. Very often inexperienced 109 pilots panic a little bit and they are diving away in a very steep angle. If you should follow is dependent on the tactical situation around you, how steep that dive is, at which altitude the fight started in the first place and in which direction the enemy is diving. For example, if he was already on a low speed and on low altitude and is diving in a panic attack to the east, yeah, that is basically a no-brainer. Just follow him and usually you should be able to catch him after a while. Often this situation results in a deck race. For some reason it's not well known that LA5s are faster than 109s on the deck, and the advantage of the LA5 increases the newer the 109 model is. If you see a tail wheel on the 109, you are fighting against the G4 or G6. Both are particularly slow on the deck, but the F4 and the G2 aren't that much faster anyway. Now with the G14 in the game, this will be a little bit different, but I don't expect that a standard LA5 will fight a G14 very often. Use that speed to your advantage, close in and shoot him down. Sometimes, however, after the first pass, the 109 is not diving away or so, but starts to fight you with aggressive climbing, with prop hangs and such. In that case, it's important to attack him again so he stays in a defensive mindset that he can't build altitude again. Usually that can be achieved with a simple loop if you have enough energy. But it's more easy if you have a wingman who just can exploit the moment of confusion by attacking him from the side or below. Smart 109 pilots don't do those prop hangs, generally speaking. They know that they get attacked by multiple enemies quite often and they aren't so aggressive. You will notice skilled 109 pilots by the following behavior. As he dodged the initial attack with a nice energy saving roll, he will enter a dive away from the action. He will try to get out of gun range first and will then shallow out the dive as soon as he achieved that. The unskilled LA5 pilot follows that dive directly on full throttle and gains a bit on the 109. Often a tiny bit out of gun range. The expert 109 levels out and it looks like he's running away. The LA5 follows on the low 6. And that shallow dive had the purpose to equalize the energy state. Before this situation, the LA5 had more potential energy and had more kinetic energy. Now, after the dive, both have tons of kinetic energy, so are traveling very fast, and both have similar potential energy states. A first minor victory for the 109 since, the energy advantage is gone. After that, the run transitions seamlessly into a shallow climb, and the unskilled LA5 follows. The climb gets steeper and steeper and steeper, both aircraft get slower and slower and slower. The LA5 pilot noticed that he's all of a sudden on quite some altitude and that the 109 is now out-climbing him horribly. The 109 can now position himself over the LA5 and can boom and zoom the hell out of the Soviet aircraft, and the roles of attacker and defender are finally reversed. So for you as a skilled LA5 pilot, you have one particular moment to recognize that something is up, and that is where the 109 is diving away in a shallow angle. To counter that, the LA5 pilot has to stay above the 109. Don't dive directly after him, but pick up speed but stay 1 to 2k above him. That way the 109 can't climb anymore without climbing into your guns. If the 109 doesn't climb, the only chance he has is leveling out if he doesn't want to hit the ground, and that will cost him speed as a drag slows him down to his combat power top speed. Keep him in sight while flying above and next to him. After a while you will notice that he slows down and then you can dive on him. The altitude you kept will make sure that you have way more energy available to run him down very quickly. I call those tactics contain tactics, as it contains the energy state of you and the enemy fighter. When you then finally attack, the enemy often evades, and after each evasion he should have less and less energy to do anything against your attacks. And against your 1700 horsepower engine you can keep your energy advantage quite easily and nicely on the deck. Of course, as always, those chases take time, and those chases only should be conducted if the tactical situation is allowing for it. It makes no sense to dive knowingly after the next enemy if he is already pretty close to his own airfield, or if you have to ignore the 3 190s you saw earlier on higher altitude. So situational awareness is key in fighting in any fighter. Speaking of 190s, the tactics, generally speaking, are quite similar when you are in the energy advantage. 190s are a bit more sturdy under fire. Furthermore, good pilots won't try to outclimb you, like 109s for example, but very often they just run and they use the high throttle settings after a very steep dive with multiple direction changes. A dive you rarely can follow without ripping apart. They will run away if you don't kept some altitude. 190s in general are very hard to catch, and if they have enough separation they will enter a shallow dive and they will keep their distance until they can run in a straight line to outrun you. But when you are close enough, the contain tactics I mentioned earlier against the 109 work here as well. Just wait until the 190 gets slower on the deck and keep some altitude. As soon as you are equally fast, you can dive in a shallow angle and use the rest of your altitude to get more speed. As you attack, you can force an evasion, and as soon as he has to evade your attacks, you can outmaneuver a 190, since he will lose speed and can't outrun you anymore. As you maneuver against the 190, be very careful. 190s have similar horsepowers on the deck, and with a roll rate and effective elevator can change direction very quickly. A classic La-5 death is getting too overconfident in the initial attack, zooming up and getting killed by a fast reacting Focke-Wulf. Long prop hangs above a 190 are not recommended if the 190 had some speed left. They can bite you very hard. However, as soon as they get slow, you have every maneuverability card on your side. Down low and slow, you can outturn, outclimb and out-accelerate them. Okay, enough about the tactics when you are in the clear advantage. Let's say you meet a 109 on the same energy state. What do? Maybe the situation is the following. In a head-on, you just pass each other on, let's say, 2 to 3 kilometers. A clever 109 won't engage you there right away. He will just pass you and will start a shallow climb. He will try to get above you and he will do just his 109 things, like earlier. So your first job in that situation is to deny the 109 the possibility to climb. Sometimes you are able to get in gun range in time and fire some shots. They force the 109 to maneuver, sometimes in panic, and then you get them into a defensive position and in the energy disadvantage. Alternatively, if you see no chance to get him to turn or to get into range in time, you just can push through and you can try to disengage. If he follows you, that puts you in the energy disadvantage, but that is still better than to fight his fight with all that climbing and stuff where you have no chance. If you fight his fight, you will certainly lose against a decently skilled 109 pilot. In a moment I will explain what to do in such a situation when you are racing away from a 109, but before I do that I want to discuss what you can do against a 109 who is more aggressive. Let's say the enemy pilot is one of the aggressive branch and he turns around quite quickly. Well, turn fights are mostly hard to win against 109s. Against BF-109Gs it's kinda possible and doable with some flaps and goodwill, but it's hardly a tactic to recommend, and especially below the ideal turning speed of the LA-5. The LA-5 bleeds speed very quickly in turns and leaves you vulnerable. However, very often the 109s turn very hard into you and they are losing speed, and very often you can just stay out of their turn radius and turn a little bit wider than they do. This way you conserve a lot of speed and they use energy all the time. And with your high horsepowers on the deck, you basically can energy fight them in a turn fight. Just wait until the 109 gets slow and in the meantime stay out of their turn circle and attack in slashing attacks. That forces evasion after evasion until they run out of speed and you can finally shoot them down. A similar head-on same energy situation is a little bit easier if you fight a 190, or at least a little bit less dangerous at first. The 190 is able to outpace you in a straight line, but is not able to outclimb you below 4k and is on equal speed and energy state not able to outturn you. So if you are in range you can force him to maneuver or to dive away. In that case you are able to get quickly into the energy advantage, and if he climbs you can follow him generally speaking for a while, but don't follow him too long above 4k, that will only result in fights you can't win, similar to the 109 fights earlier. But usually they like to race away, but as long as you are not in gun range there's nothing you can do about that. If the 190 is in range you should have no problem to shoot him down in a maneuvering fight like explained earlier. Sooner or later in your LA-5 sorties you usually have the situation that you are in the defensive position. So the most important thing in a defensive dogfight is to see an enemy early. The ideal defensive situation is solved this way. You see an enemy approaching your area of operations, he is in the far better position but he doesn't see you yet, you just leave the area and you come back with the advantage. Problem solved. Sadly this is often not realistic, right? So let's think this through with increasing escalation scenarios. Let's first assume a situation that a 109 is on your 6 in the better energy state and he is seeing you, but he is still out of gun range. Like in the example earlier where we decided to disengage while meeting in a head-on in similar energy states. The best thing you can do is to initiate a shallow dive to pick up speed. Make sure that you keep your distance. Don't turn a lot and keep some altitude after your dive. You may need it for diving or for maneuvering later on. Ideally he's not fast enough after the dive and he won't catch you. Important is to keep your outlet shut, stay on boost and you can just outrun him. End of the story. If needed, run to the closest airfield, rest your engine, clear your mind and fly back to the front and pick up the fight again. With a wingman, however, things get a little bit easier and you can turn things around quite quickly against one single enemy, and that is done with drag and back tactics in such a situation. Okay, that being said, let's say the enemy is a little closer and cannot be outrun right away. You still should pick up speed quickly. Goal is to get you and your enemy faster into speeds where the LA-5 is more maneuverable. What I do from there is highly dependent how close the enemy is, how fast he is and from which direction he is coming. And when he is still some distance away, first measure should be to mess up his approach. For that I like to initiate a turn in one direction, and very often a 109 tries to get tons of lead for a deflection shot. And as he settles up, I like to roll over the side where the ground is. This way he has to guess if I want to do a split S or a turn reversal. And I like to do both in variations, depending on situation. If he is very close, I like to do a split S, and if he follows, I like to do a barrel roll right away. Unskilled pilots overshoot right there, since the control lockup is quite intense in a 109. Furthermore, the unskilled pilot comes in with too much speed and with an untrimmed elevator. Skilled pilots, however, don't follow at all and they zoom up. But in either case, you bought time. On the former, you are now even in the offensive, and in the latter, you have more time to live. Such urgent measures are never guaranteed to work over the long run. They rely on very good timing, a lot of skill and luck. The enemy has to make the mistakes. Usually defensive actions can be countered quite easily, and if the attacks are done right, it's just a matter of time until you run out of options. However, buying time is often enough to survive. Time gives you opportunities, a lot can happen with time, so do whatever gives you time in such a moment. But of course with some variations. Use rolls, feint turns, feint split S, wide rolls, tight rolls, whatever throws his aim off. Sometimes some flaps can help to stay stable in such a maneuver. It's not a shame to run at the first possible moment where you have enough separation and to exploit that, for example, the 9 lost sight or something like this. Sometimes if you have to do something really urgently, 90 degrees dives with violent rolls and elevator use are another good measure to throw off his aim temporarily. Diving through clouds to block the sight is another good thing. Fire a flare gun can remind the 9 that he can be jumped as well, and that is often interpreted as a call for help. That he should never try to outclimb a 9 should be clear by now, but that is especially true if you are in the energy disadvantage. Would be a very bad idea. As soon as a 9 is behind you, is on the same speed, and the speed is pretty low by then, there's basically almost nothing you can do. Of course you can still do your violent rolls or something like this, but a skilled 9 pilot will just chop the throttle and will gun you down. But of course, again, with luck and time and maybe a teammate around, wonders can still happen. As for 190s, 190s are freaking scary. Defensive action against a good flow 190 is hard. Harder than to fire against a 9 in my opinion. First, they are faster on all altitudes, so they will catch you if they want, especially the A5. They roll very well, so it's very hard to outroll them. They are better maneuvering at speeds, so what works against 109s doesn't work against 190s, since they turn into you with an excellent instantaneous return rate, and they can easily get a snapshot on you. In short, 190s are scary. However, that doesn't mean you can't buy time. Basically the same way we solved the 109 situation earlier. Shallow dive, full throttle, away from the front, back to the next friendly airfield or objective or whatever. This time without the prospect of outrunning the enemy, but at least it takes ages to get to you and gives the 190 pilot a lot of time to think and of course teammates the chance to attack him. Should he catch up, you can use feints and all the stuff you used against the 109, but this time not with the goal that the enemy locks up, but hopefully that he can't follow all the maneuvering in time and overshoots. A skilled 190 pilot just doesn't slow down. He will just use his speed and he will trade speed for altitude and will attack again later. But you bought time again. And not every 190 pilot is that skillful. Some others are just overshooting and are not careful with their speed, leaving you in the offensive position. And then you can just outmaneuver them and shoot them down. Of course, there are many situations in between where you temporarily can outturn an enemy, temporarily they are in the energy advantage, then are you in the energy advantage. That's what I meant with air combat is highly situational, and all the skill sets you need to solve those situations are only achievable with time and experience. And if you invest that, you will succeed after a while. But that's it for this video and concludes my tutorial on the La-5. I hope you liked it. If you did, drop a thumbs up on the video, and if not, let me know what you have not liked on the video, since I then can improve my videos. As always, I have to thank my patrons, since they help me to do these videos. Those take time and effort. Thanks for your support. But I hope I see you all in the next one.